Before we get to our next speaker, I just want to take a minute to take a quick look at a presentation from our other gold sponsor, Partium. Okay. Our next presentation is by Philip Bagala, Chief Revenue Officer at Partium. I believe Philip is joining us from Europe, so huge thank you to him for being here. I'm guessing it's quite early for him. Philip has been working in the software sector for over 10 years. In his role as Chief Revenue Officer at Partium, he's led many international projects focused on AI-based identification and search for spare parts and maintenance, after sales, and service environments. Philip will be speaking today about optimizing operations and the role of AI. Partium gives outlook into the roadmap. Once again, after Philip's presentation, we will open the virtual floor for any questions. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Thanks for being here, Philip. We'll send it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. I have with me a very important person today, actually the one who's going to hopefully do most of the talk. It's going to be Yvonne, who works for a company called Cedel, which I think, there he is. Hi, Yvonne. Thank you so much for hopping on. Yvonne is based out of France, and I'm based out of Frankfurt. So for us, this is the night shift. Let's hope we you know, make it count. Let me pull my screen real quick, and then I'm going to hop right in. All right. Hey. So thank you so much. I guess everyone can see my screen. So yep, I'll go real quick. Kirsten already did it. My name is Philip Bagala. I'm the CEO of Partium, and really, you know, I'm pretty much a founding member of this company. I've seen it like when in its infancy and where it is right now. And we happen to be in a magnificent position to have, you know, very great customers, like for example, Cedel here and Yvonne Certain. Maybe Yvonne, you want to, you know, say a couple of words too about yourself?
Hello, nice to meet you here again. Yes, I'm working for Cedel since 20 years, and my company, in fact, is in touch with Partium since more than 1 year now, and we are working together in order to make some, I would say, some upgrade and improvement in our e-business platform. So that's all.
Thank you. Just a brief overview over the agenda today. So we're going to talk a little bit about like Cedel and Partium and kind of what the background is, even though I really like the video. I guess it, you know, is important to get a little bit of background, actually, like how this touches into MRO maintenance and things like this. Then we're going to go a little bit into challenges and what Cedel, who is actually, you know, they're actually a manufacturer of like food and beverage products, or like lines to produce these kind of products, what they're trying to improve, and what kind of like impact that actually, you know, is going to have for maintenance technician fixing and working lines that Cedel put out in the field. Yvonne is going to shed a light on like how Cedel is actually leveraging Partium, and then later, and I really like Kim's presentation here and the whole thing of like, okay, AI is brand new, everyone is eager to learn about it. And, you know, I get a lot of these kind of questions of like, okay, where's AI right now, or visual AI or part search AI, and, you know, where's the industry trending towards, and, you know, what are these roadmaps look like? And I'm going to speak a little bit about that, and then I think we can open it up to, you know, a bit more, you know, questions from the lovely folks on the call here. Then I'm going to bed. So let's start with Partium, because I think it's important to understand what we do in order to see like how this connects with Cedel. So the stuff you see here on the screen is really customers of ours. You can see at the top here, you know, CNH Industrial, you probably know them as like New Holland, people who essentially, you know, they build tractors, they maintain tractors, that kind of stuff. We have Engel, they're building injection molding machines, they're a manufacturer. We have a company here called Gerolsteiner, which is a German food processing company that basically, you know, producing bottled water. And I could imagine, you know, there could be a customer of Yvonne's. I don't know, but they might be. There are companies like Liebherr, heavy mining equipment, Vienna Energy, power plants, Bosch. They, you know what they do. They have like manufacturing plants producing all sorts of things and components. Deutsche Bahn, high-speed trains. So as you can see, we service kind of like two sides to the market. We service OEMs who really, well, they produce machines and they want to, you know, give operators of machinery and equipment pretty much an easy way to identify spare parts, access documentation, order spare parts for that matter from them ideally, and, you know, generally take the guesswork out. And then of course we have operators who, you know, also they operate assets, fairly complex ones, and they have a lot of pressure of keeping these things up and running. And as you're probably aware, you know, there are a lot of struggles or like a lot of like challenges when it comes to this. And we'll go a little bit more into detail and stuff like this, but the idea is here, and I guess the video kind of showed it. Essentially, you have a very smart AI that will essentially help maintenance technicians to identify the spare part that they need. So you're on a line, or like you're trying to fix a tractor, or you're trying to fix like your bottling machine up there. You don't know, and you don't want to look up in a catalog. Maybe you pull out your phone, snap a picture of it, maybe refine the search a little bit, and essentially it's going to tell you, well, it's kind of part and what kind of bin it is. And you save a whole lot of time, and it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but depending on like what kind of plans, what kind of assets you're looking at, and what kind of footprint and maintenance you have, it actually saves quite a few people a whole lot of time. And then, you know, Yvonne, hand it over to you. Talk a little bit about Sidel.
Yeah. In fact, Sidel is maybe some of you can know it, but it's not so common. But it's a manufacturing company providing some lot of equipments or many equipments and services for packaging, liquids. What we basically we cover almost every type of beverages like carbonated, non-carbonated, and also soft drinks, milk, dairy, juices, tea, coffee, and different type of, and also personal care, health and personal care. So, I would say we in net sales basically it's something like 1.4 billion net sales, and around the world we have something like we produced already something like 37,000 machines, different type of equipment, and it's a company with something like 5,000 people, I would say, and worldwide. We have a big network around the world for services and manufacturing and so on. So basically, that's it. We already developed a long time ago, so since 5 years, we developed a kind of e-business platform for services to provide to our customers and technician customers, but also internally for our support internally, to have a kind of portal where we can create some kind of offers, orders, order trainings, and these kind of things dedicated to each customer, I would say, with their lines and so on. So basically, what we put in place is to it was basic search, I would say, because each customer have access to their own platforms, their lines and so on. And but basically, the way to search and find some parts, most of the time, per month, we receive sometimes different type of requests as a support, I would say, but different kind of requests. And we receive around the world, I would say, by month, something like 3,000 of requests. We are in fact dedicated to some technicians want to identify some parts, broken parts, on different kind of things. Most of the time they know what it is, but sometimes it's very difficult as they are broken and so on. So it's never easy without a kind of recognition by picture. We have some features to identify, but the best way we were looking for, in fact, some kind of a way to by taking a picture with some real picture to identify quickly, because today it's basically offline, I would say, by kind of mail and so on. So sometimes people are struggling to find some parts. They miss or they don't lose the proper features on the parts. So basically, we put in place a kind of, as you can see here, very complicated way to, because we have to separate different type of requests we can receive sometimes from the platform. And basically, we have a kind of complicated workflow and to create a kind of knowledge base to answer faster and faster to our customers. But obviously, it's not very convenient. It's time consuming also. So we were really looking for something which, in an easy way, to identify from picture by mail and so on, or through the platform, but to find some before. Like you can see, in fact, the customer or the technician can make a request by mail or through the platform, and there is some part administrator to identify, who have a certain knowledge about different type of equipment. We have many type of equipment, so it's never easy to find. So we decided, in fact, to go through a kind of we made some benchmark with on the market what we can have for benefit for this kind of research by pictures, I would say. And basically, we start to a journey with Partium, because in fact it was the best result with our different benchmark on the market. So we start with a short perimeter, small perimeter, a kind of proof of concept, obviously. We make some exchange and so on. Regarding the typology of our components, I would say it's really the best result we can have from now. Obviously, the trend is very is moving today with AI on picture recognition and so on. Obviously, it's moving very fast. So we have to stay very large listening about what is happening. But for now, in order to have a kind of good way to in a short time, I would say, to go through a kind of offline process to answer to our customers, we decide to go on an online process. I would say more online process, and it's a quite easy way through. Everything is still, we decide to have through our platform, because our platform is already concerning a lot of type of different services, I would say. So through this platform, so our platform, in fact, we are using a kind of link and so on all the knowledge of the Partium recognition, AI recognition. And honestly speaking, for the moment, it's a restricted perimeter, because we are just out of some kind of proof of concept, but we plan to cover all we already have some big database, bank of images on our component, spare parts and so on. And we plan to enlarge as fast as we can, but we plan to enlarge all our possible with updated which are updated quite every day to a fast answer and to the most updated answer directly from our customer, in order to avoid all the, I would say, the heavy process we have offline today. That's it, basically.
Hey, thank you, Yvonne. So I think this is an interesting angle, because what we're seeing here is a manufacturer of production equipment, essentially putting a tool into place that helps technicians on the shop floor. Obviously, with like their own motivation, and you can see, part search is a problem for techs on the floor, but it's also for people in supply chain. It's also for a problem for the OEMs who have to actually get a hold of the parts and ship them out. And this is an interesting one, because companies like Sidel are putting this out into existence, but on the other end of the spectrums, people operating these lines are creating these tools themselves, because that's kind of the other side to the customer base that we service. And you can see we work with OEMs and operators, and the reason is because both struggle, right? Like both have a hard time, and sometimes problems are kind of linked, but usually the data is bad. On the operator side, it's particularly bad, I will say. And of course, they don't always have convenient access to OEM systems, shops, and catalogs, because sometimes these platforms are outdated, they're not available, and not everyone is Sidel, right? Like with a tool like this. So the thing is, we kind of work on the end of like the aftermarket with companies like Sidel to improve their catalogs and like the experience for the end customers. But at the same time, we do pretty much, we put these kind of tools into the hands of the technicians on the operator end as well. And it's a different take on AI, right? Like, because it's not a predictive, it's not like preventative, it's not like all these it's not sensor based. It's really essentially, look, you're trying to find a part as fast as possible. You open like the tool, you take a picture of it, you have it, boom, that's it. And then you can, of course, add this to any kind of business process that you have. If you have it like, you want to take a look up, like, where is it in the warehouse? Go ahead. But the reality is, like, the technology right now, when it comes to visual part search AI, for that matter, it helps with poor data. You don't have any images, don't have a lot of attributes, don't have a lot of stuff in your database. It kind of works, and I'll go into the detail a little bit later. If your techs are not really like, super skilled or young or senior, junior, works fine. You can overcome legacy software, because you can essentially put this in, you can implement it, like, make it part of it, integrate it, or you make it standalone, use it as a standalone capabilities. And of course, you keep adding new sites, you keep adding new parts, you keep adding, like, working with aging data sets. It works. And the reason is because AI at, this moment is really, it almost like made a ginormous leap in terms of capability. And the reason here, the first step is, and this is kind of like the whole thing of like, okay, where are we with AI? So AI used to be, before a couple of technologies were invented, it used to be not quite that impressive, I want to say. But now with AI understanding semantically what it actually is taking a look at, or like what it's dealing with, it's actually super capable of explaining what it sees. So for example, it used to be that I needed a picture of this kind of stuff pre-trained in the AI for the AI to understand what it is. Now it will say, this looks serrated, this looks like pointed, this looks like a handle, this looks like a knife, because it's been pre-trained, it's preloaded with like semantic concepts of how this is actually, like, what this represents. That's a huge leap, because all of a sudden you can almost offload, like, a whole lot of like concept and a whole lot of expertise into an AI model, and you can actually query it, you can ask it, you can send an image and say, look, what's the part? Now, this means we can identify parts by image, code, semantic description, and so on. It works all the way to super experienced people who get faster, down to super junior people who don't have a clue at all. And that's kind of like a stretch where the tool really supports, like, people right now, as opposed to like ramping up and, doing research and stuff like this. This is off-the-shelf technology, and that's huge right now. What's crazy, and I think this is one of the things that, like, I'm most, this almost weirds me out a little bit. So because it understands it semantically, for example, that this is a knife, in German, a knife is a Messer. So if I'm an operator and in my master data, I only have the English word for a knife, the AI semantically understands that this is a Messer in German, and it would be perfectly able for me as a German to type Messer, for example, in, and it will pull up the English record set. Why is that? Because semantically, it doesn't discriminate between languages, which means, for example, if you have foreign labor and your master data is not up to it, you're actually completely capable of like getting away with them operating a tool such as Pardium without enhancing the master data to the point of actually reflecting these kind of languages. That's one of the things where a lot of customers are like, wow, that's crazy, but it helps. And this is kind of like, you know, with Sidel, what the example that Yvonne gave is like this piece here, the visual search down here. But really this pertains into semantic search, you describing it, for example, just genuinely describing what you see. Because maybe you don't have a clue, maybe there's not a label, maybe it's a special kind of tool, maybe you work with this kind of tool every 6 months, and you just don't know, maybe you're brand new. You know, then there's with GenAI options to essentially enhance bounds, attributes, filters, and stuff like this, and essentially like work with even super poor and super outdated data and kind of like get it to the next level. And then, of course, you have analytics in the sense of like, look, what kind of parts were searched, where does people struggle with, what do we need to do, and things like this. And all of this is essentially right now, it's available for implementation. And it was built by companies like ours to basically work with the data that exists. Because what we learned when we joined the market, and I'm a tech person, I worked my entire life in software. I looked at when I came into this market, everyone told me my data is horrendous. So we kind of like said, okay, we cannot expect them to fix their data. So we have to build a tool around working with weak data. And that's kind of like, that was a huge struggle before we saw like, you know, advancements on the AI front as a whole from a technology perspective. Example here, how does this work? Basically, what you see here is like how this works. Semantic concept. We are able to basically translate an image to a vector, like an image to like a semantic understanding. We are able to, you know, essentially take human text and translate it into a machine readable, understandable like vector. We can use exact and variations and we fuse it all, which means we take a look at like the AI takes a look at the part database and essentially like, you know, clusters it into what it understands. So for example, this is how you're completely able to get away with, for example, synonyms. You know, if you have a lot of synonyms and or abbreviations and stuff like this, it doesn't matter. It's horrendous to work with this in SAP, but if once you apply a semantic engine, you know, at the problem, you basically, it makes sense out of all of these things. And your team, your technicians can work pretty much like they always would, except they don't have to be onboarded on abbreviations, on crazy things, on restrictions in their SAP system, or any of that good stuff. Again, we built this for people on the shop floor, technicians. We built this also for supply chain people, procurement people, people who really struggle to identify these parts and like find the right part. Good example here. This is typed in Portuguese, but you can see, for example, it turns out like the screw connection. This is really a cool thing to see live. And it makes sense if you're an international organization. And I love looking at like, I work a lot in the US with US data, and I see a lot of German in there because Germans love to build manufacturing machines or like food and beverage machines. And then they hand it over with partially German data. And I don't know why we like to do this. I'm a German myself, but I think it must be one of these things where like we don't take the time to translate it properly and like fully into English or like the language onto the market where we export it. It deals with it without actually like having to touch with the data, having to touch the data. And it works live. And that's kind of, that's the step where this is at right now. Now, where is it going? And I think when we look at like things like predictive and sensor-based, input-based things, a lot of stuff can happen. Or a lot of, this is where the focus on was for a very long time when it came to, you know, technology leaps and technology and things like this. This stuff is actually a fairly small piece in like the whole clockwork of like what goes into maintenance, right? Like, because it's almost a niche within a niche, but it benefits greatly from AIs and its expanding capabilities. And I'm not sure who on the call already like messed around with ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, and all these LLMs. I'm assuming at least one or two of you, or some of you might even be power users. But as you can see, first step for like the technology was essentially to understand it on a deeper level, not to compare images. That was like 5 years ago, but actually to extract what it sees on the image. Now we're in the moment where LLMs or Gen AI is actually like maturing at a rapid pace. Now, imagine it like this. We are right now in a position where I can take a picture of, like, for example, I don't know, this piece here, which I struggle to describe as a human. I know what it is, but I'm not going to tell you. But like, I would struggle to describe this if I didn't know what it is. Right now, if the AI is capable to find it in my material master, it's great. But I can already also go ahead and essentially ask the AI to say, for example, AI, describe this for me. What do you see on the picture? What essentially is the criteria for this? Like, how do you look at this? Or I could say, what part is missing with this, if that makes any sense. So like, for example, if I take a picture of a knife and I say, what kind of part is missing, or like of like an electrical or mechanical part, it will say, for example, usually a piece like this comes with nuts and bolts. And that's because the semantic understanding is baked in, and with Jaden AI, I'm actually fairly capable of extracting these information, which means I'm going to get to a position where I can have a conversation with an AI about spare parts. Now, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but sometimes it actually helps a great deal, especially if you put documentation in it. If you put like, stuff in the SAP that's usually inaccessible to like maintenance technicians on the floor. So Gen AI in combination with like semantic capabilities is really like, okay, at the very end of it, you're going to be able to essentially ask an expert, which you have in your pocket, on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, and this like AI is essentially going to give you a really capable answer. So it used to be much more, I call this reactive. It used to be, okay, we kind of throw AI on, and we kind of throw AI on like weak data and see that we can get away with it and see what we can get out of it. Now, when you look at spare parts data, especially in operator cases or like in maintenance, it's never great. I have so many customers or so many people who are sitting in these calls and they say, look, this is my data. How am I I don't know how we keep it up and running. And now you come here and you tell me this works. And I used to say, well, look, we work even with poor data and kind of works out, but with Gen AI and things like this, we're actually able to now assess it and say, for example, look, in your 150,000 parts, in this kind of parts category, the data is particularly weak. Let's do something about it. Let's ask the AI what it understands, what it's missing, what it's proposing. So, and this works at scale. Customers tell me, look, we do this manually sometimes. We kind of like manually fix data entries when you find them weak and things like this. Now we kind of like, with companies like Deutsche Bahn, they operate like the German, train network. They use our tech to basically heal the master data because conceptually, it understands what it sees. It says, hey, look, I can also contribute because I understand like millions of spare parts. This kind of stuff is important. Let's add this to the database. Let's add this like to the parts data. And it accesses, like it unlocks use cases beyond the traditional use cases that we were servicing. So Yvonne is kind of like one of the prototype customers or one of the very archetype customers for like visual search and things like this. And it already does very well for them. But when you apply the same technology or the same approach of actually like looking at data, understanding it, understanding parts data, figuring out what is in the data, where the weaknesses are, then you can access cases like, for example, deduplication. It's not like, Command C, Command F in Excel, where you're trying to find the same string. It says, look, this is a completely different string, but it looks fairly similar because I've seen this before, or like I understand this is a duplicate with a very high likelihood this is a duplicate. Do you want to do something about it? So you can apply this, and this is something that like is right now essentially not even in its infancy, but it's being productorized. Okay, so this is like on the forefront of like where the tech goes. But it's the same with like data enhancement. We essentially can say, look, this is what we understand in the catalog. Let's open it up and like basically tap databases, verify, validate, and stuff like this, and pull the data in, if it makes sense. Used to be completely manual. It used to be a pretty tedious job to do something like this, but it isn't anymore. And the reason is because now you can do it at scale, because if you ask ChatGPT a really good question, then you get a really good answer. And this is kind of like what with Gen AI, semantic concept, and like where the AI from our perspective is trending. Because it was never easier to kind of like deal with like the vast amounts of data that you guys have in all of like your EAM systems, ERP systems, and where you struggle with, right? You genuinely struggle because it's not your core job. You're like supposed to keep things up and running. So yeah, we kind of, as a company, change. And this is an interesting one because I work with a lot of companies like Sidel, and Sidel is really a great company because they're really innovative. They do a lot of stuff, but it's almost like even if they put out a new line, it will still produce food, beverages, personal hygiene things and stuff like this. And when I started in this company, it was completely different, right? Like, and then the technology changed and like all of a sudden our product looks completely different. And if you ask me, how does it look in 5 years? I think we're going to see something along these lines in terms of, okay, look, AI is going to really, really, really improve things that were really hard to improve. And it's widely applicable to many cases in maintenance, but this is one of the fields where basically it's almost hard to keep up as a tech person with like how much changes, so no one heard ever of OpenAI and all of a sudden, like, the world is a different one after you woke up. And it's cool because these benefits of these LLMs, they start to trickle into really complicated industries. Kim's the talk she gave, really impressive. It's really complicated. And, for us, for tech people, we kind of grasp like, okay, maybe like 15% because we didn't grow up in this industry. And we see, okay, this is challenging. And we really, really hope that we can contribute, through things like this and essentially like making this technology approachable or applicable to use cases that help people like you and like your technicians, like your crew, maintaining great machines like the ones Sidel is already helping you maintaining.
Sure.
Yeah, you can see this here, just a couple of like reference slide, things like this. We have ÖBB trained people. They started with search. Now they retrieve product lifecycle information. Deutsche Bahn did the same thing. They remove duplicates. They look for like the material master. They consolidate warehouse stock. Nextera, same situation. They kind of like, now consolidating their material master. They kind of like looking at part numbers because they have like a horrendous system where basically like they almost, anyway, they're basically the search cases where they started and now they're really, really engaging in like, okay, let's fix data. And then Glencore, one of my favorite ones, search. Now they're going after critical parts, warehouse stock they're trying to kill. They're trying to remove taxonomy issues. And of course, they want to kind of like essentially manufacturing numbers is what they want to try and find. So many of these things, unlock search is often where things starts because that's a fairly easy business case. And usually we kind of like end up with something completely different or like business challenges that we attack, as the technology matures and essentially as like the customer grows into our product as well. And I think unless Yvonne, you have any question or you have any things to add or stuff like this, but we can probably open the floor.
Sure.
Does anybody have questions? Please put them in the Q&A. Okay, there's a question here. What are the most, oh, sorry, that was the old one. How can I introduce Partium? What is needed to get started?
Oh, this is a good question. Probably a dump out of your material master in like your EAM, ERP, things like part number, part description, maybe a couple of attributes, things like this. The model comes preloaded. You don't even need images. You're going to be able to stand this up with like almost a flat file of the parts that you have in your plans.
Absolutely. This is exactly what we have done, in fact. At the beginning, it was exactly like this. Retrieving some kind of part of database and see the name, the different languages, and so on, some attributes. And it was the start. We made some tests, some exchange on it, and with some, I can say, some adjustment regarding our sector, I would say, and basically it was the beginning of the journey, I would say.
Yeah, pretty much. usually it also collects data as you go. You stand it up, you put it into the hands of technicians, and technicians collect the data for you when they snap pictures and stuff like this. There's a lot of like data that is essentially user generated once you have it like on the maintenance within the maintenance crowd, like with the text and with the people in the warehouse.
Okay, if there's no other questions. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. I'm sure it's an awkward time for you. So we appreciate you pulling an all-nighter or whatever you've had to do to join us here today. Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.